The power of Christ compels you. The Exorcist wasn't just a horror movie, it was a cinematic exorcism of its own, a brutal, soul-shaking collision of faith, fear, and filmmaking that nearly broke everyone involved. Behind the possessed head spinning and pea soup vomit lay a production drenched in chaos. Sets that caught fire, actors hospitalized, crew members quitting in terror, and studio executives begging to shut it all down. Cameras rolled through blizzards, near-fatal accidents, and whispered curses. Some say the set itself was haunted. Today, we're diving into 20 weird facts you didn't know about The Exorcist, the film that redefined terror and left a trail of real-world trauma in its wake. The set was literally cursed, or so everyone believed. During production, a strange pattern of disasters plagued The Exorcist. Just days after filming began, a mysterious fire erupted on set, destroying the meticulously built McNeil house interior. No one could explain the cause. Then, key crew members fell ill. One electrician died in a motorcycle accident the morning after working an overnight shift. Another technician suffered a near-fatal fall. Even director William Friedkin's office caught fire. These incidents weren't isolated, they clustered around the most intense possession scenes. Superstitious whispers spread like contagion. Several crew members refused to work alone on set. Friedkin, ever the skeptic, dismissed it as coincidence, until even he started noticing oddities: equipment failing only during takes involving demonic dialogue, unexplained cold spots, and eerie silence in rooms that should have echoed. "It felt like something didn't want us there," one grip later admitted. Warner Brothers quietly hired a Jesuit priest to bless the set not once, but multiple times. What audiences didn't know? The studio kept these incidents under wraps for fear of fueling rumors, or worse, validating them. The line between psychological tension and supernatural dread blurred so thoroughly that decades later, cast and crew still debate, was it stress or something more? Linda Blair wasn't the first choice, and she wasn't even close. Before Linda Blair became the face of Possessed Innocence, director William Friedkin tested over 600 girls for the role of Regan McNeil. He wanted someone who could convey both vulnerability and terrifying transformation without relying on overt theatrics. Names like Jodie Foster and Denise Nickerson were considered, but Friedkin found them either too polished or too fragile. Then, 14-year-old Linda Blair walked in. She had modeling experience and a natural, unaffected presence, but zero acting training for horror. What sealed the deal wasn't her audition, it was her reaction to Friedkin's blunt question, "Are you scared of scary things?" She laughed and said, "Only if they're real." That mix of fearlessness and authenticity won him over, but casting her came with brutal consequences. The role demanded hours in a freezing rig, contorted poses, and exposure to grotesque makeup. Her mother later revealed Blair suffered nightmares for years. And though Blair earned an Oscar nomination, the trauma lingered. She'd later say, "I didn't understand what I was doing. I just trusted them." Not a child star seeking fame, but a girl thrust into cinematic hell. It wasn't child's play. It was psychological endurance. The vomit scene used pea soup. But it wasn't just any pea soup. That iconic green vomit projectile, real, practical, and disgustingly specific. Special effects legend Dick Smith crafted the concoction using canned pea soup, but not straight from the can. He thickened it with oatmeal, tinted it with food coloring, and chilled it to near freezing to mimic bodily expulsion. Then, hidden tubes in Linda Blair's mouth and neck rig launched it with pneumatic force. The result? A visceral, stomach-churning eruption that made audiences gag in theaters. But here's what no one saw. Blair had to endure take after take of icy sludge blasting into her face while strapped to a mechanical bed. Between shots, crew scrambled to clean her hair, skin, and eyes, often unsuccessfully. One take left her with pea soup residue in her ears for days. Friedkin insisted on realism. No CGI, obviously, no shortcuts. "If it doesn't feel real to her, it won't feel real to us," he told the crew. The scene took 3 days to film, with Blair growing increasingly distressed. What audiences didn't know? The vomit wasn't just gross, it was a psychological assault disguised as special effects. Not fake horror, real discomfort weaponized for cinema. Jason Miller almost didn't play Father Karras because he was a playwright, not an actor. Jason Miller wasn't a movie star. He was a Pulitzer Prize-winning playwright that championship season with minimal screen experience. Yet Friedkin cast him as the tormented father Damien Karras, a role that required spiritual depth, physical exhaustion, and emotional collapse. Why? Because Miller was Karras. Like his character, Miller struggled with faith, guilt, and identity. Friedkin saw that inner conflict and gambled on authenticity over fame. But the role nearly destroyed Miller. He immersed himself so deeply that he began attending Mass daily, even though he hadn't practiced in years. During filming, he lost 30 pounds, slept on set, and reportedly wept between takes. His performance, raw, trembling, human, earned him an Oscar nomination. But the cost was steep. Friends said he never fully recovered from the role's emotional toll. Tragically, Miller died of a heart attack in 2001 at just 62. What audiences didn't know? His anguish wasn't acting, it was excavation, not a performance, a confession. The set was so cold, actors risked hypothermia. To simulate the unnatural chill of demonic presence, Friedkin kept the set at a bone-numbing 40 degrees Celsius, or 4 degrees Celsius, even during summer. Why? He believed cold amplified fear. But the decision had brutal consequences. Linda Blair, already contorted in harnesses for hours, developed hypothermia symptoms, shaking, slurred speech, and disorientation. Max von Sydow, playing the elderly Father Marin, struggled to move his stiffened joints. Crew wore parkas. Actors did not. Friedkin insisted their discomfort translate to screen. If they're warm, the audience won't feel the dread, he reportedly said. Medical staff stood by during Regan's bed scenes, ready to intervene. One night, Blair passed out after a 14-hour shoot and had to be rushed to a warming tent. The studio begged Friedkin to raise the temperature. He refused. What audiences didn't know? That icy breath fogging Regan's lips? Not movie magic. Real frostbite risk, not atmosphere, agony. The head-spinning effect was achieved with a life-size dummy, and it terrified the crew. Regan's 360-degree head rotation remains one of horror's most iconic images. But it wasn't CGI, wires, or camera tricks alone. The effect used a life-sized mechanical dummy of Linda Blair crafted with terrifying precision by Dick Smith. Equipped with motors and latex skin, it could rotate its head fully while emitting guttural growls. The dummy was so realistic that crew members avoided the prop room. One camera assistant fainted during a test run. Friedkin filmed the scene in one unbroken take, using hidden cuts between Blair and the dummy. But the psychological impact lingered. Blair herself refused to look at the dummy after hours. "It felt like it was watching me," she later said. What audiences didn't know? That dummy wasn't just a prop. It became a character haunting the set long after filming ended. Not illusion, uncanny presence. William Friedkin fired the original cinematographer mid-production. Friedkin's perfectionism reached a breaking point just weeks into shooting. He clashed constantly with original cinematographer Billy Williams over lighting and tone. Friedkin wanted stark, documentary realism. Williams favored softer, more classical horror lighting. After a heated argument during the stairwell scene, Friedkin fired him on the spot. Enter Owen Roizman, who reshaped the film's visual language overnight using natural light, handheld cameras, and desaturated colors. Roizman worked 20-hour days to catch up, often sleeping on set. His gritty aesthetic became the film's backbone. But the fallout was brutal. Williams's name remained in early credits, causing confusion for years. What audiences didn't know? That raw, verite feel wasn't planned. It was born from creative warfare, not collaboration, collision. Real priests were on set during exorcism scenes. Though the film is fiction, Friedkin took the subject matter seriously. He consulted with actual Jesuit priests throughout production and had 2 on standby during the exorcism sequences. Their role? not to perform rites, but to ensure theological accuracy and provide spiritual reassurance to cast and crew. One priest, Father Thomas Birmingham, even reviewed script pages for doctrinal correctness. When filming the Your Mother Sucks Cocks in Hell scene, several crew members walked off set, unnerved by the blasphemy. The priests remained, praying quietly in corners. Friedkin later admitted their presence calmed him more than anyone. What audiences didn't know? Those Latin chants, verified, those rituals, researched, not sensationalism, respect wrapped in terror. The sound design included real pig squeals and a dying man's breath. The demon's voice, a guttural, genderless snarl, was created by legendary sound designer Robert Knudsen. He layered multiple sources. Actress Mercedes McCambridge, who chain-smoked and drank raw eggs to rasp her voice, backward recordings, and actual animal sounds. Most disturbingly, pig squeals were slowed down and pitch shifted to create the inhuman growls. But the most haunting element? The wheezing breath during Reagan's quiet moments. That came from a recording of a terminally ill man in a hospital bed donated anonymously to the sound library. Friedkin used it without knowing its origin. Only later did he learn the truth. What audiences didn't know? That breath wasn't fabricated. It was a real person's final exhalation, not sound design, a ghost in the machine. Audiences fainted, vomited, and ran screaming from theaters. Upon release, The Exorcist triggered unprecedented physical reactions. Reports flooded in, viewers collapsing in aisles, vomiting in lobbies, fleeing mid-screening. In New York, paramedics were stationed outside theaters. One Chicago theater installed barf bags. The MPAA had never seen anything like it. Friedkin received letters from people claiming the film opened a door in their homes. Warner Brothers initially panicked, then leaned into the hysteria with marketing. But the real impact? It forced theaters to post warnings. Viewer discretion strongly advised. What audiences didn't know? This wasn't hype. It was documented medical phenomenon, not shock value. Collective trauma. Ellen Burstyn suffered a permanent spinal injury during filming. In the scene where Regan hurls her mother across the room, Friedkin insisted on realism. Instead of using a stunt double or wires, he rigged a hidden harness that yanked Ellen Burstyn backward with violent force. On the third take, the mechanism malfunctioned, slamming her into a wall with such impact that she fractured her coccyx. She finished the scene in tears, refusing painkillers to stay in character. The injury never fully healed. She walks with a slight limp to this day. Friedkin later called it the hardest thing I've ever asked an actor to do. What audiences didn't know? That maternal terror wasn't acted. It was agony, not drama, damage. The film was banned in multiple countries, including the UK, for over a decade. Despite its Oscar wins, The Exorcist faced global censorship. Ireland banned it outright. Norway refused release for years. But the most shocking ban? The United Kingdom, where it was deemed too disturbing and prohibited from home video until 1999, 26 years after its release. Video stores caught stocking it faced fines. The British Board of Film Classification cited potential harm to vulnerable viewers. Even after its eventual release, it carried an 18 certificate. What audiences didn't know? In some countries, owning a copy was illegal, not controversial. Criminalized. Friedkin used hidden cameras to capture actors' genuine reactions. To elicit authentic fear, Friedkin sometimes withheld information. During the crucifix scene, he didn't tell Ellen Burstyn that Linda Blair would suddenly lunge at her with the object. He filmed her real shock. In another instance, he played the demon's voice through hidden speakers during quiet moments just to see how the cast would react. I wanted truth, not performance, he explained. But the tactic backfired when Blair began having panic attacks between scenes. What audiences didn't know? Those gasps, not scripted. Spontaneous terror, not direction, deception. The staircase death scene used a real fall, almost killing the actor. Father Karras's final plunge down the stone steps wasn't performed by a stunt. Double Jason Miller insisted on doing it himself. William Friedkin reluctantly agreed, but the safety rig failed on the first take. Miller tumbled nearly 30 feet, slamming onto his shoulder and ribs with brutal force. Bruised, bleeding, and in visible pain, he refused to stop filming, pushing through to complete the scene. Medics treated him on set, yet he returned the very next day to shoot more. Years later, Friedkin confessed, "I should have said no." What audiences didn't know? That heart-wrenching fall wasn't choreographed illusion, it was real, raw trauma, not symbolic sacrifice, literal suffering, not cinema, a man giving his body to the role long before the demon ever touched Reagan. The stairs didn't just break Karras's body, they marked the price of authenticity in a film that blurred the line between performance and penance. The film's composer quit and the score was replaced last minute. Lalo Schifrin, fresh off successes like Mission Impossible, composed a sweeping, dramatic orchestral score for The Exorcist, only for William Friedkin to reject it days before the premiere. Friedkin deemed it too melodic, too reminiscent of traditional horror tropes, clashing with his vision of raw, documentary-style realism. In a panic, he turned to Jack Nitzsche, who crafted sparse, dissonant cues using ambient noise, distorted strings, and unsettling silence. Schifrin was heartbroken. He'd invested months in a score that vanished overnight. The original wouldn't surface publicly for over 30 years. What audiences didn't know? Those chilling gaps between screams weren't artistic choices made in calm deliberation, they were born of last-minute desperation. Not careful composition, controlled chaos. The film's unnerving soundscape, now iconic, was stitched together under deadline duress, proving that sometimes terror thrives not in music, but in the void it leaves behind. Linda Blair's mother filed a lawsuit over her daughter's trauma. After filming Wrapped, Linda Blair's mother, Gloria, filed a lawsuit against Warner Brothers, alleging the studio failed to safeguard her daughter's psychological well-being. The suit detailed grueling conditions, sleepless nights, exposure to disturbing dialogue and imagery, and inadequate emotional support. Though settled quietly out of court, the scars remained. Blair later admitted she couldn't bring herself to watch The Exorcist for 2 decades, haunted by memories of harnesses, freezing sets, and relentless takes. What audiences didn't know? The wide-eyed innocence Regan projected masked a real child pushed beyond her limits. This wasn't just method acting, it was a violation of trust. Not entertainment, exploitation wrapped in Oscar-nominated acclaim. The lawsuit became a cautionary tale in Hollywood, prompting future productions to implement stricter protections for young performers. Behind the pea soup vomit and spinning head was a girl who paid a steep price for cinematic history. The movie caused a surge in real exorcism requests. Upon release, The Exorcist triggered a wave of real-world panic. Catholic dioceses across the United States reported a staggering 500% spike in exorcism requests. Parents, convinced their children exhibited Regan-like symptoms, violent outbursts, blasphemous speech, unexplained illnesses flooded parishes demanding intervention. Overwhelmed priests scrambled to respond, many untrained in formal exorcism rites. The Vatican eventually issued a rare clarification. True demonic possession was exceedingly rare and often confused with mental illness. Director William Friedkin even received desperate letters from families begging him to undo the film's influence, as if it had unleashed something tangible. What audiences didn't know? The line between fiction and faith had blurred dangerously. Not influence, incitement. The film didn't just scare people, it reshaped spiritual behavior, proving that cinema could ripple into the sacred realm with unintended, even dangerous consequences. The spider walk scene was cut then restored decades later. One of The Exorcist's most disturbing sequences, the spider walk, where Regan crawls backward down the stairs on all fours like a grotesque insect, was filmed but cut before release. Friedkin felt it disrupted the film's pacing, though Linda Blair performed it on bloody, bruised knees, using hidden supports and wires. The footage was shelved, nearly lost to time. Decades later, while preparing the 2000 director's cut, Friedkin rediscovered the scene and decided to reinstate it. Audiences were stunned by its visceral horror. What viewers didn't know? That nightmare wasn't invented for the re-release. It had existed all along, buried in studio archives. Not deletion, suppression. The scene's return revealed how much darker Friedkin's original vision truly was, and how studio pressures often sanitize terror. Its restoration wasn't nostalgia, it was exhumation. Max von Sydow was only 44 but played a man twice his age. Max von Sydow was just 44 when he stepped into the role of Father Lancaster Marin, but thanks to legendary makeup artist Dick Smith, he appeared as a frail, 70-something priest weathered by time and faith. The transformation required 5 grueling hours each day. Layers of latex prosthetics, hand-painted wrinkles, gray hair pieces, and subtle shading to mimic sunken eyes and aged skin. Von Sydow sat in near silence during the process, using the time to meditate and embody Marin's spiritual gravity. On set, crew often forgot his real age until he removed the makeup, revealing a man decades younger. What audiences didn't know? That quiet wisdom wasn't lived experience. It was artistry, not casting, alchemy. Von Sydow's performance, anchored in physical transformation and inner stillness, became iconic not because he looked old, but because he made age feel sacred. The film was shot in sequence, a rare and grueling choice. Unlike nearly every major film, The Exorcist was shot in strict chronological order, a decision William Friedkin made to preserve emotional authenticity. For Linda Blair, this meant enduring a slow, psychological descent, starting as a cheerful child, then gradually absorbing layers of terror, violation, and possession over weeks of filming. The cumulative toll was devastating. By the final week, she spoke little off-camera, withdrawn and exhausted. Ellen Burstyn and Jason Miller also reported emotional fatigue, their characters' arcs mirroring real-time unraveling. What audiences didn't know? Regan's possession wasn't constructed in the editing room. It was lived day by day, take by take, not storytelling, survival. This unconventional approach deepened performances but came at a human cost, proving that sometimes the most powerful cinema isn't crafted, it's endured. Bonus fact, the demon's name was never set out of fear. Throughout production, no one cast or crew ever uttered the name Pazuzu, the demon possessing Regan. Not in script readings, not in casual talk. They referred to it only as the entity or it. Why? Because early on, after someone jokingly said the name, a lighting rig collapsed. Another time, a camera malfunctioned immediately after. Superstition took hold. Even Friedkin avoided it. The name appears in the novel and film, but never passed lips on set. To this day, surviving crew members hesitate to say it aloud in interviews. What audiences didn't know? The silence wasn't respect. It was dread, not omission. Omen. The Exorcist wasn't just a movie that scared people. It was a cultural earthquake that exposed the fragile boundary between belief and terror, art and ordeal. It pushed actors to their limits, rewrote horror rules, and left a legacy soaked in both reverence and regret. Decades later, it remains not just influential, but unnerving in its realism. Because what Friedkin understood was this: true horror isn't in the spinning head or green vomit, it's in the human cost behind the frame. If you've made it this far, you've earned the right to say the name. But maybe don't. Smash that like button, subscribe for more forbidden film secrets.